You might talk to us about April 18th, 2012, which was, I think, a day that changed your life forever.
Me, sorry? Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
sorry,
okay.
sorry, yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, those that don't know, in 2012 I had a stroke, quite a major one in Brisbane. So yeah, it was a bit of a change for me, so to say. What would you like to know?
Well, I was reading your autobiography, which is well worth a read, and
Thank you.
like, funny you mentioned Andre Agassi's autobiography quite early in it, and like the opening chapter of that is seen as probably one of the great opening chapters of any sports autobiography, when just the reveal of post-match, the pain, and you talk a lot very early in the book, and you paint a pretty bleak picture of the days after you have that stroke, and the pain is so severe that you're very much questioning what's next, and
Yeah.
you come to the right decision, but like those initial days afterwards, just how tough was it, and the journey to where you are now?
Yeah, it was pretty hard. I mean, how to make this a little bit more entertaining than what it really is. No, well, I had my back right artery here split in Brisbane, and that caused the stroke to happen. So there's a big bleed and swelling on the brain, and I was jet lagged. I'd only gone to Brisbane for about 3 days to visit my parents, and I ended up staying 2.5 months. And I was with some friends on the evening, and I took a sip of beer, it went down the wrong way, and coughing and choking fit, which we've all done. It was quite a big one, but then for various reasons my artery split and went to hospital. It's actually it was on a Monday evening about 6:30. Nobody else in the place. We'd eaten, and I'd only had a couple of light beers. It wasn't a big night at all. And then I remember this happening, and friends had called an ambulance, and I was sort of lying down, and the ambulance people have arrived. And I remember this young lady who was serving us that night came over and started, oh my God, squealed, and what's going on here, and oh geez, And anyway, one of my friends said, "Don't worry, love, we think it was the steak." And I started to laugh, and they said, "Don't laugh, don't laugh." Anyway, I went to the hospital and in intensive care, and nice friends, huh? Then the first word was, well, when I first heard the word stroke, I thought it was sort of, jet lagged, a bit dehydrated, tired, that sort of thing. They'd give me a tablet and send me home and say, sleep it off, but stroke. And then it was, brain operation, brain surgery. I thought, shit, this is pretty important, this is pretty serious. And then I sort of got around all that and sort of, okay, I'm ready to go. And I'll never forget, the 2 doctors came and sat at the end of the bed and said, we're not going to do it. And I said, why not? I'm ready to go. And I was sort of conscious through all this, and while I couldn't see, I sort of knew what was going on. I'd lost all my sight and was quite in a lot of pain and what have you. So, but then they said, well, you're functioning too well for what's happened to you, and we don't want to go in and, things go wrong when you have brain surgery. And so we don't want to do that. We're going to do it a different way, and which involved, over the next 2 or 3 days, basically trying to reduce the swelling by dehydration. And unbeknownst to me, my father was there, and he's a clinical psychologist, so it had been used to dealing with brain injuries and things like that, so he sort of knew a little bit about what was going on. And unbeknownst to me, he asked the doctors when I wasn't in the room, how often does this work? And he said, we've never done it before, so that was a bit worrying. But over those 3 days, and the doctors always said that it'd take 3 to 4 days before we knew it was working or not. And in the meantime, they'd wake me every half an hour and ask me all these questions to see if my condition was worsening. And if it did, they'd take me in to operate. And they'd ask me questions like, who is the Australian Prime Minister? And I sort of went, well, when I came in, it was. It could have changed by now. But and then gradually, after about 3 days, it was getting pretty bad. And the pain and just everything. And in the book, it was... I remember it was late at night, one it was sort of early morning, and it was just, I was thinking, oh, my wife's okay, she's young, so she'll be all right, and all that sort of thing. And then I got 3 boys and started thinking about them and, what would happen and stuff. And I said, no. In my own mind, I sort of, no, I want to go and see them again. And this is God honest truth. It's not sort of something I've made up and just to sell books. It hasn't sold very well anyway, but and I just sort of made my mind up at that moment, you know, no, I'm going to fight this and try and go home and see my kids. Bear in mind, my kids and wife are in London. I'm in Brisbane, the other side of the world. So, and it was I'm not saying that I've got this huge mental power, but that sort of decision to fight and then coincide that with the doctors and what they were doing started to work at the same time. And after, you know, the next day, I remember my father coming in and he says in the book, I think, where he basically said something had changed. Michael seemed to be better than he was the day before. The previous 3 days he was worse. And then I came out of that and went upstairs to the ward and just sort of tended to recover. And I still have after effects. I only have half my sight. I've only got, I wear these because I'm old and I can't read and see, but my sight, I lost all my peripheral vision to the left. So if I look over here, I can't see anything over here. I can't see my hand here or anything like that. Looking at you lot, it's not a bad thing, but anyway. Sorry. And I didn't drive for three and a half years, but now I do. So if you see me on the road, stay out of my way. But apart from that, it was a big thing, and you know, I get asked a lot, did it change you? Do you take live every day as like it's your last now? And I said, well, and that's often people say yes, but I sort of knew I'd had a pretty good life before that, you know, good family, good kids, and job, and played for my country, all that sort of thing. So I knew I had a pretty good life before that, so I didn't need to have a stroke to reaffirm that. But so I'm grateful, and it was hard, but I'm sort of 6 years out now, and everything's good, touch wood.
Brilliant.
Yeah.